Learn about the strides female entrepreneurs of color are making. Be inspired by their story and enlightened by their leadership, insight, and advice.
Welcome back to another episode of WinHers United, the podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Walker, and I truly appreciate you listening in. This is Season 9, Episode 6, entitled Reimagine What's Possible with Jaime Legagneur. Before we jump into the interview, I want to tell you more about me and WinHers United, the podcast. I believe that success leaves clues, and WinHers United, the podcast was created to give you the clues you need to succeed in business, mindset, personal development, and self-care. These are the 4 pillars we stand on here at WinHers United, which is why they are emphasized, so we all can live a complete and fulfilled life, both personally as well as professionally. If it's not too much to ask, please go to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star rating. Then write us a review. As a thank you, I'll be giving shout outs on future episodes to those that take a moment to do this. Now, without further ado, let's get into Season 9, Episode 6, entitled Reimagine What's Possible with Jaime Legagneur. All right, we are back with another amazing, winning women of color entrepreneur. So Jaime, welcome.
Hi, Nicole. Great to be here. Thank you so much for having me. This is going to be fun.
You're welcome. I'm excited too. All right. So before we hear from Jaime, let me tell you more about her. Producer Jaime Legagneur discovered podcasting in 2014 and has grown her business, Flint Stone Media, along with Florida Podcast Network, hosting and producing podcasts and managing podcast networks. She is a podcast producer, coach, speaker, and industry expert who earned the privilege of being the first podcasting instructor for the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. She's also the recipient of PodFest 2020 High Achiever Award, and she manages to do all of these amazing things while being a single mother. So Jaime, oh my goodness.
If I was a black, I'd be blushing.
You are amazing. You are amazing. You hear me?
So, let's talk business.
All right. So let's get started by you telling us what prompted you to leave your 15-year career in data analytics and how you got started in the podcasting industry.
Oh, gosh, that's a great question. So I was bored. 15 years as a data analyst, and I was bored, and I'd really grown as much as I could. I got into data analytics because I love solving puzzles. I love solving problems. And I love being able to go to a department head and say, you know, what do you need in reporting, and be able to write thousands of lines of code and do all the things. And then their job gets a lot easier. So I love that. But after 15 years, I pretty much had grown as much as I could. And I used to listen to this radio show every day, and it would get me through my day. And it was my favorite talk show. It was on the radio in the mornings, and they started repackaging it as a podcast. So I'd listen to it on replay throughout the rest of the day, every day. This is all I listened to. And the show got taken off the air, essentially. It got moved to another station and kind of deconstructed. So I started this campaign to say I wanted them back on the air. And it got really, 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 really big and ended up involving hundreds of listeners and fans, huge crowds at festivals cheering for them. I got on the news, television news, in the media, newspapers, all kinds of stuff. I was a little obnoxious about it, but I won. I got them back on the air. And so that they called me, this radio show that I've been such a fan of, they called me and they said, when we get back on the air, we want 2 producers. We would love to consider you to be a producer. And I said, you know, I've never produced anything before, right? And I'm like, Jimmy, shut up. Your dream job is being handed to you on a silver platter. Shut your mouth. But I said it, and they said, that's okay. You can be the content producer. You know our content. So I thought, well, I don't want to walk in day one not knowing anything. And so I'm like, let me start a podcast. Then I also thought, well, I'm really good apparently at digital marketing. So I started my company doing digital marketing, social media, website design, development, PR. And I'm like, how do you build a business doing something you love? How do you do what you love for a living? I don't know. How do you do that? So I'm like, well, let me ask some people. I said, well, let me ask some people on a podcast so everyone can get their answers. So I started podcasting in order to find out how to build a business that I wanted to do for a living, to figure out how people do that. And then it also was a way for me to spread the word. And on accident, fell in love with podcasting. And I was not officially offered the job with the radio station. And so now I had this business that I was growing. I was falling in love with podcasting. And I went to my first conference about a year and a half later. And that was it. I was done. I was like, oh, you can make money at this? You can build a business? Oh, tell me more. Then that was it. Then I flipped my business from digital marketing and web design and stuff to podcasting over several years. It took a while.
I love that. I love that. I feel like so many gems.
Yeah.
I gleaned so many gems off of that answer in itself, right? I feel like many people can relate to being bored in what they may currently do in their career path, right? So kudos to you for having the courage to not allow yourself, right? You're welcome to stay there, right? Because some people just, oh, this is it, and I'm going to stay here, right?
Exactly.
So I think that deserves a congratulations. Yes. And then solve a problem. Like anyone, all of our faithful and loyal listeners know that they've heard this time and time again, right? A lot of people's business has come from them solving a problem. Mm-hmm. And I love that it wasn't even solving a problem for yourself. Well, kind of yourself, but not really, right? It was helping someone else. Of course it was, I want to still hear these people, right? But it was you going out of your way to help someone else. I think that's amazing.
And so actually, that's why the name of the company, I don't know if this is a question you're coming to, but that's why I named my company the way that I named it, was because I wanted to be a company where its purpose was to help other people have their dreams come true. It felt so good to know that this radio station, they had built this show for so long. They loved this show. They loved their listeners, and it was falling apart. It was crumbling. It was being cut off at the knees. And then here comes Joan of Arc Jemmy and saves the day. And I was like, that feels really good. That feels really good. So I wanted it to be a company that helped set everybody else's goals and ambitions on fire. So that's, exactly why I did it.
I love that. Love that. Other gems I gleaned was don't take no for an answer, right? Like God. You talked about halfway being obnoxious, right? But that really sounds like, just determination, right? And that's a gem within itself, right?
My dad has a name for that. He calls it being a bulldog. He's like, you're such a bulldog, Jemmy. He's like, once you sink your teeth into something, you don't let go. I'm like, yeah.
Listen, I'll take it. That means I get results, right?
Exactly.
And then the other gem I gleaned was with your podcasting. And it actually reminded me of myself, where when I started this podcast, I wanted to know more about women entrepreneurial journeys and strengthen myself as a woman of color entrepreneur.
There you go.
And I love how, like you said, like get answers for yourself. There and you also, go. Well, I'm not going to just keep it to me. I'm going to give y'all the answers too.
So
like it's
great.
A win-win, right?
That's so great. The power of podcasting, people. I love it.
Listen. So when I think of podcasting, like one of the benefits that drew me toward it was that it allows you to open yourself up to a global audience, right? But I love that you took a different approach to that with the Florida Podcast Network, right? And keeping it local. Yeah. So talk to us more about your inspiration to do that and the benefits that you achieved because of doing a geolocal show.
I'll tell you what, I probably couldn't have been geolocal when I first started because podcasting wasn't big enough. It wasn't a big enough industry. It wasn't a big enough space. But I think I got in, I started it and started thinking about being geolocal at exactly the right time because it had grown enough that enough people knew about podcasting, but no one was really doing geolocal stuff yet. Not really. And so I kind of helped, I wasn't the only one, but I kind of helped create the framework of how that's done. How do you create a geolocal show? But the playbook for that wasn't mine. I totally stole it
And that's okay.
But it wasn't geolocal. It was the playbook on building a niche and building a community. And that came from my work with the Horse Radio Network. So the Horse Radio Network, they literally wrote the book on how to build a podcast network within a niche that cultivates community, has incredible sponsors that are just all over it, listeners that are all over it, great content, da 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 da. And so I said, okay, I want a network too. How can I take that framework and make it something that's geolocal? What do I do? And being from Florida, and Florida kept sucking me back in, no matter how many times I tried to leave. Keep coming back. And I'm like, all right, I'm from Florida. So being from Florida, I realized there's a lot that is about Florida. Like when you say you're from Florida, people react. Their reactions are all over the park. They're like right. Everything from, oh my gosh, you're next to the beaches, and oh my gosh, say hi to Mickey, to oh, so how were the bath salts this weekend? Like, you never know what you're gonna get when you talk to someone about Florida. So what I realized is that there's a great opportunity. And I thought, okay, if I'm building a network, where's the money opportunity really at? And at the time I was building it was 2019 when it first was getting started. And the opportunity was in Florida's biggest industry at the time. Travel and tourism. Yay.
Right.
And then comes this thing called COVID. So literally just as like the engines were really hitting the ground running, you know, our travel adventure show, Finding Florida, was making massive inroads. We had been all over the state. We had formed relationships with all these different visitors bureaus and all these things. And we had sponsorships. The ecosystem was starting to gel. And then COVID hit and all fell apart. So I had to think, and literally all the shows except for, ironically enough, Florida Beer Podcast is the only one that remained in production the whole time. So with our one little show keeping us going through the pandemic, I had to reformulate our business plan. And I realized instead, let me just create the shows that I really want. What are the shows about Florida that I really want? Because when you're in bed with the travel and tourism industry to a certain extent, you have to present Florida in a positive light almost all the time, right? You could joke about it, but there's a little wiggle room, but not a lot. Whereas I want to show the good, the bad, and the ugly of Florida. That's the fun. And so now I'm creating shows that I want. They're owned by Florida Podcast Network, so the model's a little bit different. We hire the hosts and they put this great content together and we put the shows out. And so we just literally launched today as we're recording our latest show, which is called Techsploration. So it's all about the tech and innovation spaces in Florida. So yeah. And so that's being hosted by Craig and David, who have a digital marketing agency in Orlando. They're hilarious. They're geeky and nerdy to the core, and I love it. And they're so like enthusiastic and passionate about it. And, you know, we're able to interview local business owners who are doing cool things in tech and innovation. They form a relationship with them. We can create an opportunity for their brands and businesses to be put in front of other brands and businesses that might want to play and strategize and do things. So it's just this thing that really, really works, especially now where I think we've realized over the last couple of years how important community is. I think we've all had to take a step back and recognize that more than ever before. We appreciate that more because it was taken away for a good while, right? And so now it's like people are like all hands over fist ready to do things together and collaborate so everything's about to get really, really exciting. So geolocal is really a great opportunity. You know, I think if you have a show that's geolocal, you can talk to your visitors bureau, you can talk to your small business association, you can talk to local venues, local business owners, and create incredible partnerships, local media outlets. And I get invites all the time to go to festivals and different things around because they know that when I show up, my crew shows up, we'll cover it and it'll be fun. And they're going to have a good experience working with us there. So I have great relationships throughout Florida, and it was one of the best moves I ever make was creating FPN.
I love that. Again, so many gems, right? So many gems. And I love the values that you talked about or the benefits that you talked about as far as how you can make those connections, collaborations, and build those local relationships, right? And I do agree that, you know, it is all about community. And that's one of the things I feel like I struggle with personally. It's like, I want an event. Okay. So as a global podcast, like what it has to look like maybe a tour. So then I do my analytics and I'm like, okay, I have a lot of listeners in Atlanta and a lot in California, right? But if you don't have the budget to do all that traveling, how are you going to make that happen? Then I have a virtual event and it's nice, but you do want to get together in person with people, right?
Yeah.
I love your mention of timing, right? That sometimes timing may not be the right timing, but then when you got in, it was the perfect timing. Congratulations on being a pioneer in the space.
Thank you.
That's what I heard when you said that, right?
So far, I've been Joan of Arc on this interview. So far, I've been a pioneer. This is good. I love this.
Listen, this is about celebrating, right? And then I love what I gleaned from what you said as far as you took someone else's model, right? So to me, that's like, don't reinvent the wheel. Right. And I think that they have society has like a bad connotation around copying, so to say, right? Where nothing under the earth is new. Like, okay, don't go and take this person's word for word verbatim, right? But there's nothing wrong with using someone's model as an inspiration to then create your own thing, right?
Exactly. If I'm going to create a video game platform, I'm not going to say, let me start from absolute ground zero, start from scratch. No, I'm going to say, how did Sony make PlayStation popular? How did NES grow? I'm going to look at who's done it before me and what they did right, what worked, and remodel that to fit what I want to do. And by the way, Glenn at Horse Radio Network was more than happy to guide me through this process because that's who he is. And so major kudos to Glenn for being, basically my mentor and building Florida Podcast Network and everything else. So actually, we just did an interview with him on Techsploration. So you should definitely check that out, because if anybody has sponsors on your podcast and you're getting paid via flat rate rather than CPM model, you have Glenn the Geek from Horse Radio Network to thank for setting the tone for that and making sure that podcasters got paid their true value. So I just wanted to say kudos to Glenn for that. So he does not mind setting a playbook and say, here are the passes everybody can play in this playbook.
Love that. Love it. All right. So you mentioned relationships, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like networking and having a strong network is an integral part to being a successful entrepreneur, right?
1000%.
Yes. So talk to us more about your experience and any advice that you have when it comes to building a network.
Oh my gosh. Let me get started. Okay. All right. So as an entrepreneur, when you're building something, it can be a very lonely experience, a very isolating journey. You're going to get people who look at you like, are you sure you want to do that? Or that's really not a good idea. Or you need to put food on the table. And it's going to be coming at you from all angles, and all I can say is you need to find the people who are going to support you because their dreams are just as crazy as yours are. Right. And so they get it. They totally get it. So for me, I found those people 3 ways. One is going to events, podcasting conferences. So within the medium that I produce stuff, going to conferences in the industries that I serve. So for example, Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association had an incredible conference that I went to and created great relationships there. There's a Florida Huddle story I'll tell you in just a moment. And the third way was creating my own events and things. So I created a meetup group. So I'm now the organizer of the Palm Beach Podcasters meetup group. So we haven't met since pre-COVID, but we're still there. But my point is, going to events, creating events allows you to have relationships with people. And those relationships are going to be the make or break for you. Because first of all, you'll get to meet people who have been there, done that. So you're going to get people who can guide you just like Glenn did for me. Secondly, you're going to have people who understand why you want to do it and why there's that drive. Like, we're different. Like we're different. Right. We're just different
right.
when we're
just
not
wired,
the kind.
Yes.
Yeah. When we're not the kind who can be satisfied living in a cubicle and making someone else's bank grow. Like we're different. And so you need to be around other people who are like us. And just to get that support. Plus also, as you're going through the journey, like you don't know if a move you're about to make is the exact wrong thing you should be doing. It might sound really great intuitively, right? But it could be the exact wrong thing you should do. I can't tell you how many times, because I give podcasting advice all the time. Someone comes to me and shares the same podcasting advice that Google has been serving up for years, and it makes sense on the surface. But for their test case, it doesn't make sense at all. And I have to kind of, wrangle them in and explain it, and then they see the light. So the more that you can surround yourself with people that can help you avoid the minefields that you don't know that you're stepping into, the better off you're going to be. So forming relationships is huge. Now, I've talked about where. So conferences in the medium you serve, conferences in the industry you serve, creating your own events. But also how is also really, really important. So you can go to an event as an attendee and you can network. And if you do that, my biggest piece of advice is learn the schedule, know where you want to be and when, and what talks you want to go to and those kinds of things. But also don't overschedule yourself. So you have a lot of time to make those contacts in the hallways, nurture those conversations, and really form those relationships that after the conference, they continue. That's huge. Then, so you can go as an attendee. You can also go as a speaker. I've spoken at many events and things like that. I love to talk about podcasting and whatnot. So going as a speaker, tend to get in for free.
Hint, hint.
And then also you can go, you can get media passes. So if you're a podcaster too listening to this, or if you're a blogger or whatever it is, applying for media passes can be a really great way for you to get in, to talk to certain people. Again, you'll go in for free. And because if you go, especially if you're a podcaster, you walk in there with your microphone and you're meeting everybody. But then once you've met people, really nurture those relationships. So reach out to them afterwards, write down on their business card, like some key thing that's going to remind you of who they are, because you're going to be meeting so many people. So if you're in one of those high intense places like a conference, just give yourself those cheat notes for later. But then if you're meeting people one-on-one or, by word of mouth or whatever it is, like try your best to nurture those relationships. I'll be the first to say I am the worst. My Achilles heel are DMs. I'm the worst at DMs. And it's because DMs are everywhere. I was so proud of myself. I finally signed up for TikTok. I got on the TikTok ride like a few months ago. Then I realized, dang it, TikTok has an inbox too. I can't take it anymore. So I'm the worst at that. So don't be a Jemmy on your DMs. Nurture your DMs too. But other than that, be a Jemmy and nurture your relationships.
I love that. So many gems. I'm not going to go over each one, right? Y'all better be taking the notes. Y'all have your notepads out, rewind, whatever you have to do to get all of the gems. But one thing that you said that really stuck out to me, and I can totally agree because I experienced it myself, was I'm one of those, I want to learn all of the things, right? I attend all of the different podcasting conferences. I also attend women entrepreneurship conferences, right? Because it goes with my thing, right? But I remember like one of the best conferences that I attended was one of the PodFest events, but it was when I wasn't speaking. It was when I didn't feel like I had to go to every single class that was every single hour.
Right.
I spent time in the halls. I met people and I had conversations. And I'm actually really close with one of the people, well, two of them that I met during that particular time. So Spot on advice.
Let me tell you one little add-on to that advice. Know who you're talking to. I actually had lunch with a legend in podcasting named Evo Terra. Did not realize who Evo Terra was until way later. So I totally missed the opportunity to ask him so many more questions than I would have asked him if I had realized. So yeah, take note. Use that phone. Google people real quick. Just know who you're talking to. Don't miss out on opportunities.
That's a good one.
Hey man, I admit my triumphs along with my trials. I am not ashamed.
Right. I love it. Now, let's talk mindset. So I found a quote on your website that I absolutely love, and I feel like it is related to mindset. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure.
But it reads, the only thing more powerful than your voice is your spirit to use it. So can you elaborate on that for us?
Oh my gosh. That quote means so much to me in so many different ways. Whether you're a 7-year-old girl who feels like you're crying in the corner because something's happening to you and you don't have anyone you can feel like you can trust and talk to, your voice has power. If you are an oppressed people and you need to go out into the street and protest, your voice has power. If you have had a I'm getting chills right now just saying this. If you have life experiences that you've grown from and you feel can help someone else, get on a microphone because your voice has power. The only reason people don't learn from your mistakes or your lessons is because you haven't shared them. I just believe that in every core of my being. When I went to my first podcast conference is when I not only understood potential business here, but also I really got appreciation for the power of podcasting. I remember meeting an incredible woman named Denicia, who I believe the show's retired now, but she had a show called Sisters of Flow. Yes, it was about your period and all kinds of women's health issues. And it was a powerful show. Now, when she first told me about it, I was like, you do a show about what now? You do what? Excuse me? What?
Right.
And I thought it was just bold, right? I thought it was just bold, but it was so much more than that. She told me about getting messages from girls in households and cultures that don't talk about these things, don't share any of that stuff. So for them, they'd have no idea what's going on with their bodies. And her show gave them information that they needed. And then this one really made my jaw hit the floor when she said that there was a good number of her listeners who were actually single fathers because they didn't know where to get information either. And they were raising girls and they needed answers and they were too embarrassed to ask, somebody. So there's so much power in your voice. So use it.
I love that. And I feel like part of that message, right, is you can talk about anything when it comes to podcasts. And I think that just makes podcasting super amazing also. But in the just use your voice, right? Like it may seem easy, right? But it's not as easy as it seems, which I think is why this fits appropriately in mindset, right? Like a lot of people don't like the way their voice sounds. A lot of people don't think what they had to say has value, but it does.
Let me tell
and your
you,
voice is your voice.
I have to tell you, there was a moment I hesitated starting a podcast. There was a moment I hesitated, and it was for one reason alone: my laugh. I was like, my laugh is the laugh heard around the world. It sneaks up and punches you in the face. It's like, I don't need everyone. No one needs that. No one needs that. But what's so funny, and it was always on my head, like for 2 years before I got like anyone saying anything about me or my show or anything, I was always in my back of my head. Oh, I hate my laugh. And now it's so funny because I get complimented on it all the time. I've had 3 people individually telling me I should NFT my laugh. I don't know what that means, but apparently my laugh is worth something. And I didn't know. I didn't appreciate it. So whatever it is that you're thinking is about your voice you don't like you're the only one thinking that. Use it. Use it. Use it.
Love it. Use it. All right, so let's switch a little bit and let's talk about projecting, right? So I feel like projecting is something that happens often, right? Yeah. Sometimes we may not even realize we're projecting, right? We project our feelings, our thoughts, our agendas, all kind of things on other people. But talk to us about your experience with projecting onto others and what you did to change it.
Oof. When I hear the word projecting, I don't want to say I'm triggered. But I remember what I used to do that was really, really bad for my well-being. And it was related to finances. So my parents are immigrants. They're from Haiti. We did not come from wealth. We're not poor families in Haiti, but we did not come from wealth. And so we weren't, driving the best cars. And all that. That wasn't us. We were the family that, we had to think twice about everything. Getting dinner or going to a movie or renting a Blockbuster movie. Yes, Blockbuster. I said it. Whatever, every little thing you had to think about, right? I remember one time I discovered 1-900 numbers. It was a joke line, right?
Right.
Not realizing that cost money. And my dad got the bill and my butt paid for that bill that month.
Listen.
So for me, money was like never in abundance. And so whenever I was building a business, I worked my butt off to become good at what I do and to develop my craft and to produce results for my clients and all these things. And I have a track record. But yet I also know that I can make an impact for the people who are really trying to, use podcasting and da-da-da. So for me, I wanted to help as many people as possible. I would have this struggle between wanting to raise my prices to get me closer to a livable wage. This was in the beginning of my business, getting closer to a livable wage, struggling that with, but if I raise my prices, how can people afford this? Not really representing my value. And it's taken a lot to come to terms with that and to recognize it. And when I recognized it was with the word projection. I realized what I was doing was I was projecting my budget, my lack of being able to afford anything. I was projecting my budget onto other people, that because I couldn't have afforded my prices, I was assuming that nobody else could. But the funny thing is that once you start charging your value, guess what? You can start affording your own self. Like if I wanted to hire me, I could suddenly now afford me. So I've mentally grown from that, because the hardest thing was the guilt. I really struggled with that because I'm like, I know I can help more people, but I also know they can't necessarily afford it if I keep raising my prices. But I need to keep raising my prices because I'm really, really good and I deliver all this. It's not just about editing. I'm not just editing a podcast. I'm literally taking your goal and what you're serving towards for your brand and your business and your own personal public image, and I'm crafting a show that gets you to that goal. It's more public relations than anything else. The podcasting is the vehicle and the tool. So it's the editing, it's the show development, it's the post-production, it's the marketing, it's the web design and development, it's the SEO, I've been to law school and I spilled my brain onto the table for all of my clients. So my value is another level. I'm not a Honda Accord.
Right.
I'm a Cadillac and I should be charging Cadillac prices. But I also want to help the people who can only afford Honda Accords. What do I do? And it occurred to me that once I realized that I was projecting, I still had to get over the mental health hump of what do I do. So I started, number one, going to Clubhouse more, holding Clubhouse rooms completely for free, and just whoever came in, answering lots of questions. I probably, other than the last 2 months, because I've been extremely busy, on average, 8 to 10 hours a week in Clubhouse answering tons of questions. Then it was group workshops and courses that were significantly reduced in price compared to my price tag for working with me one-on-one. So I created these other options for people who maybe couldn't afford. And also, I'm not afraid to refer either. Like I know some really great people who don't charge what I charge. So I'm also not afraid to refer people and also help the person I'm referring them to help their business grow. So all of these things have been little pieces that I've put into the puzzle to help me figure out my problem of projecting my budget onto other people. And now I've raised my prices and I feel really comfortable about it.
Okay. I love it. Again, just gem after gem after gem. I love how you figured out a way to serve everyone you want to serve without sacrificing yourself.
Yes.
Right? Like I think that probably was, like the biggest thing for me, because I can totally relate to projecting, right?
Yes.
I'm still there, right? So
yes.
You're preaching to me, so I appreciate you, right? and and I could also relate to, because I want to serve people in these different places, right? So I love how you broke down being able to do that and not feel bad about it anymore, right?
And you know what though? Like, here's what's awesome about it. So I expected to just get to a place of being comfortable. I'm like, let me just get comfortable. I'm cool, right? Let me get comfortable with this feeling. Let me get rid of this feeling. Cool. But not only that, but because I had done what I'd done, holy crap. Like I was now able to work for fewer people. I was able to make more money. And because of that, I was less exhausted. I was able to serve my clients a lot better. I was able to be a better mother. I was able to hire and increase my team, which means now creating more jobs and employment. So there are all these after effects that are so much bigger than the problem I was trying to solve. And what I really hope your listeners gain from this part in particular is the more that you honor yourself. This was a hard lesson for me to learn. The more that you honor yourself, the more you take care of yourself, literally the more that you take the mask and put it over your face first before assisting others, the better you'll be able to assist others. If you're struggling with the guilt like I was, I'm now able to do everything that I was concerned I was going to have to step away from. I'm able to do all of that a million times better, simply starting with raising my prices to better match my value. It was amazing.
Wow. I love it. I love it. And I do feel like a lot of people can take something or will learn something from that, because I remember it was a time when I was doing market research, right? So I'm asking different women of color entrepreneurs, what do you struggle with? And the consistent answer that I got was pricing. Pricing is such a big struggle. And I don't know if it's just a woman thing or not, but I know that from the women I surveyed.
Yeah. I don't know why, but it is absolutely true. I'm sure there's a book or two that's written about why, but I don't know why, but it's absolutely true.
The early bird tickets for the second WinHers United virtual summit will be free until the end of March. After March 31st, the tickets will no longer be free. The early bird special will be over. So go get your early bird special ticket today. Who wants to pay when you can get it for free? Go to winhersunited.com/events to get your ticket today. And if you want to support the ongoing production of WinHers United, the podcast, your contributions are welcomed and appreciated. There are 2 ways that you can support: via Cash App and via Buy Me a Coffee. The Cash App handle for WinHers United, the podcast, is $WinHers United. And the Buy Me a Coffee URL is buymeacoffee.com/WinHers United. All of these links will be in the show notes. Thank you in advance for your support. And remember that no donation is too small. Now, let's talk personal development. Outsourcing, I feel like, is a major step in personal development, right? You talked about how increasing your prices allowed you to then hire, to then be more available and show up the way you wanted to show up. So just talk to us about your experience with that.
Oh my gosh. So funny. Right before we got on, I recorded, I haven't had a chance to post it yet, but I recorded a little video saying, hey, I'm about to record with Nicole. But also, guess what? This is the last day to apply for my new job. So I currently have this open position with my company. So this is a great timely question. Man, I remember the first person I hired. His name's George. He still works for me. He's phenomenal. Hi, George, if you're listening.
Nice.
And I knew I needed somebody. I needed help. There was no way I was going to be able to scale my company and grow with just being one person. You know, I mentioned my one mentor, Glenn, earlier. And now I think it's a perfect time for me to mention another mentor of mine named Jeremy. Jeremy is who I learned a lot of business fundamentals from. Also website design, development, all that stuff, but business fundamentals and hiring people and all these things. And he taught me a lot. And when it comes to being able to scale, if you have a bottleneck of resources, you have a bottleneck of growth. You have a ceiling to your growth. So there were a lot of things that I was doing that was kind of falling into an administrative bucket that if it was taking up a lot of my time that I knew was helping the business grow, but it was also something that I didn't personally have to do. Somebody else could do that. Now, I happened to be speaking. I was presenting podcasting at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. This is before they asked me to be an instructor. And George worked for them. And he caught me during like a lull. And he said, hey, do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions? I have a podcast. I said, sure. He starts asking me questions. And it became evident that this kid was super passionate about podcasting. I love the fact that he had the gumption to come and talk to me and ask me, And I just liked him. He was a cool kid. So I hired him. I said, I'm going to hire you. And I just started putting things off on him that were, I called them special projects, make them feel good. But they were just, it was busy work, really. But he did it, and he was happy about it. And his role, I found promotions so fast that this kid his head spun. I just love seeing him grow and everything. But that was the most important thing. What Jeremy taught me was that in order to grow a business, you can't do it alone. You have to build your team because there's going to be a bottleneck. Jeremy also taught me that the most important attribute or trait about the people that you bring onto your team is whether or not they fit into your culture. You can teach someone how to edit. You can teach someone how to put up a website post. What you can't teach them how to do is to want to do it or to care about the work or to give a crap if it's done correctly.
Right.
And that's the most important thing. So those have been my guideposts for building my business. So I hired George, and then about a year and a half later, maybe, I went on a hiring binge and I hired like 6 more people all at once because I could see the writing on the wall. I had done such a good job building the business that all of a sudden, all these new clients are coming in that I was not going to be able to service myself.
Right.
So I needed editors. I needed more of a team. So I started this hiring process and finding people who were skilled at the craft, were willing to learn more if they wanted to. If I had more, I wanted to teach them, but that also really were excited about the job and about the work. And I couldn't be more proud of the team that I've built and am building, continuing to build so far. The most recent example I'll share as well, her name's Amber. She's been working with us, I guess, a little under a year now. And she emailed me like in the middle of the pandemic. And she basically says, I'm about to graduate. I'm really into podcasting. I'd love to, come work for Flint Stone Media and Florida Podcast Network. I said, that's great. I got nothing for you, but that's great. But let me tell you, when I did have something, she was the person I reached out to. We had been going back and forth about 6 months, and it was so clear that she was so passionate about it and she really wanted it. So I brought her on board, and she has been incredible. And she's been wanting to learn and grow. And so this most current position for somebody who, same thing, super passionate about business, super passionate about podcasting, wants to learn, and someone who I can see has all the core competencies and wants to grow.
Love it. Love it. So my takeaway is don't limit yourself. When you said bottleneck, as far as your ceiling, like limiting what your ceiling was, like that was really impactful for me. And I think that that's a great gem.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been super important. And it's still my guidepost today. In fact, the reason I know that I needed to hire this new business administrator is because I'm the latest bottleneck in the business. I know that at this point, we have the team for the editing, but I love show development, working very one-on-one, but there's only one of me. And so if I have 3 or 4 people who want to, become clients, then there's still only one of me. So now I'm teaching aforementioned George and Amber, who've been recently promoted to lead producers, to take on some of the show development role and learn this process. And so that's what they've done. But now this with the business administrator to learn like the other third of the business, the other third of my task list will be going to this new person. So I'll no longer be the bottleneck.
Well, good. Love it. Love it. And I love the promoting from within, right? I think that's awesome.
Yes, 100%, 100%. In fact, one of the things that I firmly believe in is that, especially if you're talking about having a very small team to start, is that, at least this is what worked for me, was everybody on the very initial core team knew all the things. Like they all knew how to do a recording session. They all knew how to edit. They all knew how to do the post-production. Now, some of them were editors and some of them were post-producers and some of them were recording producers, but they all knew the full scope so that I could see which area they shined the most in. And the way that they shined is how they've guided their track through Flint Stone Media. So George is really great with all the technical stuff. He's a gearhead. He loves equipment. So he's now my lead technical producer. Amber is really, really smart when it comes to knowing content, when it comes to guest relations, when it comes to be able to do research and find the story and understand the angles of things. She's now the lead content producer. And so finding out which roles people are best suited for by kind of teaching them a little bit of everything at first has proven well.
I like that. I like that because I feel like some, big corporations don't take the time or, departments within. It's like, you put a person in a place and that person is miserable.
Yeah.
Right. And then how great can you be if you're miserable?
Yeah.
Whereby it's like, what really drives this person? Because then they'll be amazing.
In fact, I've made a point with my team where we have these little check-ins every once in a while. I'm trying to do more often. Little check-ins. And I say, listen, tell me what I'm doing wrong. Tell me what you don't like about your job, but also tell me about something that you would love to do. Even if you think there's no way it has anything to do with what we're, like I say, I'd really like to check out refrigerator repair, Jemmy. Just tell me. I want to know. Can't tell you that there's going to be anything I can do for you. But if there's a random thing we're doing where we're sending someone out the field to learn refrigerator repair, you're going to be our guy.
Listen,
you know what I mean?
Right.
So, for example, George, he wants to do more voiceover work. Fantastic. He's doing some of the commercials for us now. Cody, who's one of our editors, he just told me that he's trying to learn more video production stuff. Fantastic. I'm going to start sending him some projects. So these are kind of things that I've made a point. And a lot of it, I'll be honest with you, has come from my mental notes of how I hated how I was treated in corporate America. And I was like, this is what I'm not going to do. And so I very personally and intentionally and purposefully treated my team like the opposite of all that.
I love it. I can relate to that. This is what I am not going to do. Well, exactly. I love that. I feel like Jimmy just gave us a whole 101 on hiring, and hiring well and keeping people that work with us happy and satisfied and growing, right? So that was just all of the things.
I love my team.
Yes, I love it.
Let's talk self-care.
All right. So moving into self-care, right? Like I want to take a slightly different approach to the concept.
Yeah.
I feel like many times when we discuss self-care, it's more on a physical level, like massages, hair, nails, and so on.
I literally just reminded myself to make a massage appointment.
They're important, right? So I don't want to, just because we're taking a different approach doesn't mean it's not important. I just want to hit all of the different angles, right? So let's talk about self-care from the perspective of happiness. I just talked about if you're miserable, how fulfilled are you going to be in life, right? So say happy wife, happy life. But in your cases, it's like happy mom, happy life, because I'm also a single parent, right?
Yeah.
So tell us about how choosing happiness to ultimately care for yourself and your son was a major turning point for you.
Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. I love this. Thank you for asking this. Thank you. Because I don't think women get a chance to speak on this enough. When I was pregnant with Jordan, my son, Jordan, he's going to be 10 in just a few days. I was let go of my job because I live in Florida, which is an at-will state, which just basically means we're at will to fire you for whatever reason we want, including if you're pregnant. So I was let go. In my life in corporate America, I went through the crash of 2008. I saw entire departments get walked out. I was sexually harassed at a job. There's been another company that courted me for like 6 months. I finally went in and literally 3 months into the job, they killed the whole entire department. It's crazy. I had to drive through a tropical storm to get to work for a job I could have done remotely. So for me, I was miserable working for corporate America. And I knew I'd be miserable for the rest of my life if I worked for corporate America. So when I was standing there, no job, pregnant, I thought, how do I fix this? So at the time, obviously, my choices were limited. So I did get another job in data analytics, and that was great. But I was getting bored, and I knew I wasn't going to be happy. I also knew this little life was just brought into the world, and I didn't want to miss it. I consider myself lucky in that when my son was baby, my parents live 10 minutes from me. So they were able to watch him for the first 18 months of his life. I think that's about how long he was with them. So it's very lucky. But still, even driving away from my parents' house, knowing he was there to go to work for the first time, I was hysterically crying the whole entire ride there. It was unbelievably unnatural for a mother to be separated from her baby, but it's also, and this is what really hurt, the thought of my son being a baby, not having any idea where his mother is for so long. I hated that thought. I hated the thought of growing up missing baseball games or whatever he was into, debate club, I don't care, whatever it is. I didn't want to miss it. I remember being a kid and not feeling well, going to the nurse and knowing my dad's on the other end of that phone debating because he's at a job. Can he leave? None of that ever felt copacetic to me. That doesn't seem right. So I really wanted to do something that was independent. So that was a major half of it. But there was also the major half of, I would like the chance to see if I can actually decide I want to do something that I love for the rest of my life. Can I actually make it happen? And if I can, what a remarkable lesson for my son that he can do that too. I can set my son up for that, right? Instead of what I was currently experiencing and watching all the other miserable people walking around the buildings of corporate America too.
Right.
So those are a lot of my reasons. But since he's been here, walking around the world, my heart outside my body, I've realized so much more. And I'm so happy that I've made the decisions that I did because, for example, he had his Boosterthon fundraiser thing, the fun run, a couple weeks ago. Usually it's on a Friday. So in my head, it was on a Friday. So I had arranged everything so I wouldn't have to do anything on Friday. But first of all, lesson number one, I had the flexibility without having to ask permission to arrange everything so I didn't have anything to do on Friday. But then also lesson number two, when I found out it was on Thursday. Oops.
Right.
I was able to rearrange everything.
Listen.
And still go. So I was still able to be on that field when my son was running around. And that meant everything to me. The fact that in a few days I could show up to his school and bring cupcakes or cookies or whatever the heck he wants for his birthday, that means the world to me. Like these little things, this is what life really is about. When I'm on my deathbed, I don't want to be thinking about how woulda, coulda, shoulda. I want to be remembering what I did.
Right. I love it. All right. So first things first, happy birthday, Jordan.
Yay!
Right. You heard it.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Yes. And I love everything you said. And to me, it sounds like self-care looks like freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It looks like flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like joy.
Yes.
Because I said happiness in the beginning, but I feel like happiness is circumstantial, but joy is a deeper level.
Yes.
Yeah, I love it. I love all of that. And it goes along with your value system, right? Like, what do you value?
Exactly.
You know, and figure out a way to make that your thing. Make it number one in your life, your values.
1000%. And, you know, I posted, I had a moment about a week or so ago and I posted up on Facebook. I said, I'm really proud of myself. That's it. That's the post.
Yeah.
And it was because I was reflecting that I had built this, built this flexibility. I had built this independence. I had built this freedom for me and for my son. And it's been tough. It has not been easy. Okay. Putting that out has not been easy. It's been hard, but it has been so worth it.
Good. I love it.
As a bonus, let's talk celebrating wins.
So tell us about your latest win and why it's important to you.
Okay. Well, the one that comes top of mind is the fact that I get to now co-host a very special show. It's the Podfest podcast. So I get to co-host it with Glenn from Horse Radio Network, and he's my favorite person to co-host anything with because, like, we look so different on paper. You couldn't, like, the boxes don't check at all.
When I saw y'all together the first time, I was like, okay, that's an interesting collaboration there.
They don't check at all in the same column. But we have the best time. So that's reason number one. Reason number two, though, is because it is Podfest. it's a milestone moment to be able to represent one of the biggest brands in the industry on a regular basis is so cool, right? But that's not even the reason why it's a win. The reason why it's a win is because, so that first conference I mentioned going to, that first podcast conference where I learned that there was a business side to it, where I learned about the power of it and all these things, was Podfest. And remember how I said that whole thing about projection and mama's got a limited budget and all the thing? Yeah, I couldn't afford to go. Okay, I couldn't afford to go to Podfest. But I was listening to a show put out by Libsyn called The Feed, and they mentioned that Podfest had this Pay It Forward program. And I was like, what's this? And essentially, where an attendee would buy an extra ticket and then give it to Podfest to say, give it to whomever you think deserves it, best would use it. Da, da, da. So I quickly applied and I got one. I was like, oh my gosh, it's the best thing ever. And I called up my friend Teresa. I'm like, you better apply, girl. She did. So she was my roommate. We got in the car. We headed off to Podfest. And so what I didn't know until a couple of years later, and I actually didn't have it firmly confirmed until about 6 months ago, was that I was the first ever to Pay It Forward ticket ever awarded. The first ever.
Wow.
So the fact that I was able to go to this conference for free, and it changed my entire life. It gave me the support, the mentorship, the stewardship, the fellowship that I needed to make this podcast thing a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Man. So I just felt like the luckiest girl ever. And then to get their high achiever award was fantastic. So then to get the call to co-host their show, it was like, please don't pinch me, because if I'm dreaming, I don't want to know.
Right.
Know.
Let me just stay here, please and thank you.
Exactly. Exactly. I can't thank the team over there enough. And I also want to say a special thank you to Gabe Aloisi, who is the kind soul who thought of the idea for the Pay It Forward program, pitched it to Chris, Kermit Sosa Podfest. Chris said yes. Gabe bought the first one, and so I was the recipient from Gabe's generosity. So thank you, Gabe. You made me, man.
I love that. I love it. And it's so funny. I'll never forget so Jimmy doesn't know that, I've been low key stalking her for a while, right? She, like at the different podcast events, right? And I remember hearing you, look, no, nothing at all, right? I remember hearing you share this story or similar, and this was prior to co-hosting the show, right? But just getting that ticket, right? And I just thought it was super amazing. I've also received a Pay It Forward ticket, right?
Hey.
Right.
You're like a club.
Okay. Sometimes you need a helping hand, and you can't be afraid to say, I need a helping hand, right?
Exactly.
And Chris has also been instrumental in my podcasting journey. I just think it's amazing, just the full circle that you've experienced, right?
Yes. And it's actually funny because so at that Podfest, I decided to turn it into a project. So the show I was doing at the time was called Curve the Cube, and it was actually interviewing people who are doing what they love for a living, like I was kind of mentioning. So I decided, well, I'm going to a conference with a whole bunch of people doing what they love, and let me just ask them. So I did like a Vox Pop version. I just asked a whole bunch of people really quick, why do you love podcasting? Why do you love podcasting? I sewed them all together for an episode. But that's how I met Glenn and Gabe. Glenn and Gabe happened to get an award that year, and they were both coming off stage. And so I shoved my microphone in their face and said, can I please interview you? That's how I met them. After the microphone went off, they turned to each other, and Glenn says to Gabe, she's really good. And then a conversation ensued about me that I'm like, I can't believe I'm witnessing this. This is crazy. And then Glenn mentored me and then hired me and da-da-da-da. And the fact that at that moment, I didn't realize that I was interviewing, on the one hand, the man who had mentored me and helped me become a professional podcaster. And on the other hand, the man who had given me my ticket in the first place.
Wow.
So cool.
Chills,
So cool.
And that's the other story I remember, because they talk about the amazing relationships that can be built from attending Podfest, and you and Glenn's relationship is always the relationship that's highlighted.
No one saw it coming.
We got a whole celebrity here today, y'all. We got a whole celebrity. I love it. All right, Jimmy, I could keep you here all day, and I won't mind, right? But I'm sure you have a life outside of talking to Nicole. So tell me what a WinHer means to you.
So here's the fun thing. Now, I know you were tripping up on my last name earlier, but I'll tell you why you're going to love it. You're going to love it. Ready? So Legagneur is French and actually means something. It means the winner. Isn't that funny?
Okay.
Right? And also, another fun fact, my middle name's Nicole. But anyways.
Listen. All right. I love it.
So what does a WinHer mean to me? It means a woman who is not afraid to forge her own path. Nothing holds her back. That doesn't mean she's not afraid. She's brave through the fear. That doesn't mean she's not self-conscious. She steps forward proud and confident anyway. It's creating a moment for yourself where, even if everything is stacked against you, you show up and you do your best and you try and you win. That to me is a WinHer.
Yeah, you know what? That's it, y'all. We done. No, okay. So now
and scene.
I love that. And I love the momentum, the aura that was behind it, right? So we might have to use that for a commercial. All right.
Go for it.
So tell us any parting words of advice you may have, and then let us know where we can find you, connect with you, stalk you, all of that good stuff.
Oh my goodness. You know what? There are going to be days where you're going to be wondering, why the heck am I still doing this? Whatever this is for you, it's going to be hard. What I would suggest is right now, if you haven't started this yet, do this right now. Start a list. It can be handwritten. It can be in your phone, whatever. A list of reasons why you are building your thing, why you're doing whatever it is that you're doing. And they can be everything from the most frivolous to the most serious to the most just silly, right? When I was building my business, for me, it was things like wanting my freedom, wanting to be able to go to my son's field trips when he had them, to also just being able to build my own nest egg and leave a legacy. The reason I say this is one of the most important things you can do, because when those times are super tough, I can call up Nicole, I can call up my dad, I can call up whoever, right? And I get a pep talk that Martin Luther King would be proud of, right? But it still might not motivate me out of my funk. Best person to motivate you out of your funk is yourself. And so if you write those words down when you're feeling them, when they pop into your head, it can be anytime. I'm not saying driving a car. Don't do that. Don't drive and write anything down. But any other time, stand in line or whatever, write it down. And then when you're having the toughest moments, go to your own voice. Again, the only thing more powerful than your voice is your spirit to use it. So go into your spirit that you had the moment when you wrote those words and tap into that and get your strength back from yourself. WinHer.
Yeah, listen, I want to follow up, but it's not about me right now. Where can we find you?
You can find me at all the things, Flint Stone Media. FlintStoneMedia.com is the website. And on social, I'm at Flint Stone Media or Producer Jemmy.
Jimmy, thank you so much. You all of the links will be in the show notes, right? So make sure you follow Jimmy and all of the amazing things she is doing, and totally appreciate everything you shared. I had chills several different times. I am just totally wow. So thank you.
Thank you. This is such a great conversation. You're an incredible host. I'm lucky to know you. So thank you, Nicole.
Oh, you're welcome. What's your takeaway from this episode? Send me an email and let me know. My email is winhersunited@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. One of my mottos is sharing is caring. So I sure hope that you care to share. Also, don't forget to check out the show notes for this episode to read Jimmy's full bio, get the Cash App handle for WinHers United, get the direct link to my Buy Me a Coffee page, get your ticket to the WinHers United Virtual Summit, and more. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another amazing, winning woman of color entrepreneur. But until then, as always, be empowered and empower on.